Well, let me welcome you to this webinar today. I would like to start by asking Mr. Brent Siegel from our sponsor organization, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, to say a few words, if you please.
Sure, thanks, Janie. Gamarjaba, on behalf of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, it's very good to be with you. It's an honor. For those of you who don't know me, I know there's some familiar faces on this call, but my name is Brant Siegel, and I'm the Senior Program Manager in the Foreign Agricultural Service, whose mission is to improve the free flow of agricultural trade. And we do this webinar in partnership with the U.S. Department of State, and my branch within USDA funds this series of exchanges because we believe in helping Georgia be a very capable partner utilizing science-based and risk-based approaches to agriculture and agricultural trade. We know that this is what supports free, stable, and diversified trade that strengthens food security and global stability for all of our people, and especially our farmers. And that's why we're here today. We're here to exchange best practices in support of one another's efforts to serve those people. And I'm proud of my very small part in this, and even prouder of the people who are making it possible. Janie and the RAPTI team, thank you. Thank you also to our Georgian partners at the Customs Department and the National Food Agency for taking time out of your day and bringing your staff to take time out of their day. We really appreciate it. Very grateful for your continued partnership and your willingness to join us. Thank you also to our partner, Greg, from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Really looking forward to your contributions here, and thank you for sharing your time and your expertise. We're very much looking forward to learning from you. So I won't stand in the way of a good exchange, a good talk. So just say thank you one more time to everyone, and I wish you the best of success on today's exchange and all of the future ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brent. It's always a pleasure to have these technical webinars with superstar experts. We're very, very lucky today. So my name is Jenny Dubois. I am the consultant for RAPD, the implementing organization in Georgia. And it is a great pleasure for me to introduce Mr. Gregory Parkover, and I'm sorry if I butchered your name. He is the Director of Import System Solutions at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. His division plays multiple roles in support of FDA's mission by supporting the development and maintenance of critical import admissibility systems. He started his professional career over 20 years ago. We're all getting up there as a programmer for an ATM company that manufactured machines for local businesses. After several years, he joined the Food and Drug Administration in the Office of Regulatory Affairs, or ORA. And if you recall from our previous webinars, the ORA is the part of the FDA that does the enforcement of the regulations. Then he moved directions to support import IT work within the Division of Import Operations and Policy. In this role, he helped support the development and the maintenance of mission-critical systems and data entry, including PREDICT. And PREDICT is FDA's predictive risk evaluation for dynamic import compliance. Without further ado, welcome, Mr. Parkover, and thank you very much for joining us. Let me share my screen now.
And thank you. And you said my name perfectly. So
wonderful. I always have the excuse that, my first language is French. So I will share this one. Start. And share. Here we go.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm sharing the wrong screen. You see, no, that's beautiful.
I I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I work with some amazing people on the PREDICT team. We actually have a team. We have a team lead in charge of the overall PREDICT targeting tool. And then each team member is assigned to a different part of the agency to work directly with them. We have product centers. So we have the Center for Foods, we have the Center for Drugs, we have the Center for Tobacco, and Center for Medical Products. So one person cannot be an expert in all of FDA. So my team is assigned to each center. And then they have a point of contact to work directly with that center, because the center is the product expert. They're the experts in, we're talking about food, say seafood or baby food. They're the experts. We need their expertise in order to program our side of the house for targeting and stopping bad products, but also letting good products in. So you go to the next slide. This is the process. Just like you all in the United States, we have the U.S. Customs Agency. That is the ultimate authority for for imports. All imported products, regardless who regulates them, has to go through U.S. Customs. And then from Customs, they will send the data to the appropriate agency, us being FDA. If you go to the next slide. This is, a very rough flow of the process from the little man on the top left, the importer. The importer will give the information from the manufacturer, and we'll use Georgia as an example. If we have a manufacturer in Georgia, the Georgian manufacturer will work with an importer in the United States to buy the product. The importer is responsible, and the owner, when the product comes to the United States. So if something happens, they're held responsible. But the importer then gives this information to what we call a broker. Sometimes in FDA, we call them a filer. They give them the information. The filer just does data entry. That's their job, just to enter the information in and send it to CBP or U.S. Customs. This is a critical piece because it's data, and more accurate data, we'll tell you, and we post this on our external site, the more accurate the data you give us, the quicker your imports will be processed. If you give us misleading data, bad data, we have to hold it, go out and verify manually the information, and then make a decision. So it slows things down. But we kind of have
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Of course.
I'm sorry, everybody. I practiced this 15 times and I'm still showing the wrong screen. So I just want to make sure that you get to see full view. Exactly. Now that's what I want.
So I'll go
go.
really quick. Foods is a little different when it comes to Food and Drug Administration. So when it goes across to foods, we have something that passed after our 9/11 terrorist attack. We had something called the Bioterrorism Act. That gave us a little bit more authority protecting the food supply. So if it's human foods, animal foods, the process will go over to the Division of Food Defense Targeting up the top right. They do an analysis, not on the actual product, they do analysis of what's around the product. They get access to certain information no one else does about individuals involved in the shipment. It's tied to terrorism. I mean, just to be frank, they have to satisfy that it meets their criteria. Once they satisfy it, they get a PN satisfy, and then that information comes into PREDICT. If it's non-foods, it goes straight into PREDICT. PREDICT does its thing, and it will pass the information to the left to what we call an entry reviewer. They're the first line people for imports. They're the ones that on their screen see all the information coming into the country we regulate, and then they can actually set up work. And what I mean by set up work, they could go out and take a sample. If it's seafood, sample for decomp, micro. There's all different types of samples, and depending on the product. And then it kind of shifts to the left of the field work into the investigation side. So we have an investigation branch. They will go out and support in doing the collection. send it off to the lab. The lab will send back the information, and then it goes down to our compliance. And compliance decides, does it meet the criteria of a violation? We do allow something called like a conditional release. The product technically is in violation of the Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act, but the violation will not hurt or harm a human or animal. So it can be as simple as a misspelling on the labeling. It's technically a violation, but it's not going to hurt anybody. So we can allow it in, but it's more of a warning to the manufacturer. Next time, please correct it, because we could stop it and refuse it for labeling violations. So compliance then can refuse, and we do have destruction authority, and it's very limited. So we can, if we get, illegal painkillers from a country sent, and we capture it, and there's no legal backing to have that product come in to a person or a company, and then we can destroy it. And, we have a company that we hired, we give them the product, they destroy it safely, in the best way, not to impact the environment. Or it could be exported. They could say, no, I don't want to destroy it. I'll take it back. And then they can export it out. Otherwise, if it meets all the rules and regulation, there's no violation, then it would be may proceeded into U.S. commerce. And there's two types of may proceeds, and I'll talk about it more, but there's the system may proceed, and then the human may proceed. The human may proceed is the actual individual hitting the button on their computer to allow it to go into the country. The system may proceed, it's gone through PREDICT. PREDICT's done all of its validations. PREDICT didn't find anything wrong with it. No rules fired that, anything bad about it. And then PREDICT will recommend the system to may proceed it and allow it into commerce, because PREDICT is twofold: stop the bad and let in the good, because we do not want to slow down commerce. And commerce is money, and time is money. And some of our larger corporations, if you slow them down, we hear about it. I should say our politicians hear about it, and then we hear about it. Next slide, please. And just standard map in the United States, we have hundreds of ports of entries. So land, sea, and air, and located in all 50 states, also within Puerto Rico. Yeah, I don't have Puerto Rico on the map, but Puerto Rico is to the bottom right. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. They are U.S. citizens, but they're not a state. So they have a special status, but we do have a presence on the island, and all federal laws are enforced on the island of Puerto Rico. Little history lesson. So next slide, please. So again, the purpose of PREDICT. So when there was a point in the agency's history, it was strictly science-based. So we have laboratories. We send a sample to the laboratory does its analysis, and it'll send back the results, whether the product was good or bad, and then we allowed the product in or not. But it was strictly science-based. And there was a really turn and shift in the agency's mentality. How do we become more risk-based? Well, our legacy system, what we call OASIS, did not have that capability. We could have spent millions and millions of dollars on a old system to, modernize a piece of it to support this, but it was actually cheaper to start from the ground up, because this was a new world for us, being more risk-based. What's that mean? So we actually did a contract through the U.S. Army, and through the U.S. Army is how we were introduced to a company that helped us develop PREDICT. We didn't develop it ourselves. We provided the requirements and everything, and worked with the company to actually develop it. And in the method, to replace the legacy system and the way that we target through our legacy system. Our legacy system, we could still target product, firm, or country, or any combination of. So we could do supply chain targeting, but it wasn't very dynamic. and it was very set. And one, change of a letter could get a product in. It didn't allow any flexibility or the ability to learn, and that's key. Next slide, please. So some of the methods that we use, one of the biggest ones is automated data mining and pattern discovery. Well, what's that mean? FDA gets about what we call over 50 million lines of data a year for imports. And we've been collecting this data going back to the 90s. So we have a wealth of data to work with. Well, we use that data, the historical data, to look at what's coming into the country now. And I'll give you an example. If a firm is bringing in apples and pears and fruits, it has a history of bringing in this in, and all of a sudden they want to bring in a syringe of heparin. Well, PREDICT will see and look at its history and say, this firm has no history of bringing in a pharmaceutical product. It only has a history of foods. That's a flag. So PREDICT will raise the risk and I'll let the user know this is a first-time shipment this firm's ever brought in. And we do provide the user on the screen a bunch of data, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but a bunch of data so they can actually see. We want to provide them the most information possible so they can make the best decision without having to leave their screen. We don't want them to have to go into other screens or open up other applications from other parts of our agency to verify information. So PREDICT helps with that and help to automate a lot of processes that were traditionally manual. And then the automation of the queries, this is the big part. So each of our product centers have their own data. They're in charge of some of our registration requirements. We have really strict registration requirements for manufacturers. So a food manufacturer is required to register with the FDA before they can even bring anything in. If they try to bring a product in and they're not registered, it'll get stopped. And they'll try to work with the company, get them to register, work with them. But if they fail to register, the product will be refused and either exported back out of the country or destroyed. But a lot of this data resides in applications at our centers. And we don't want our user to have to minimize their screen, go into another application. And then, that application is not designed for imports. That application is designed for the sender's work, not our work. So they had to be trained in each of these applications, and it takes a lot of time. So what we did was we created a materialized view and worked with each center and said, just give us the data that our import people need. We don't need all the other data. So registration data, it talks about the manufacturer, whether they're registered, the registration number, registration date, is the registration active? So all this data is sent to us and we put in a materialized view, and we have it for all of our centers. So when the information comes in and that product has to meet certain registration requirements, PREDICT then takes that data that's being transmitted, looks at the data in the view, and goes kind of through a checklist. Is the manufacturer registered? Yes. Is the registration valid? Yes. So it goes through a little check. What products are registered? Because that's key. Some of our registration requirements are very strict and are by product. Does the product match up with the registration? So it does it automatically and almost near real time. So it's a key to our users that it's become normal to them. A lot of our users weren't around when it was manual, so they would be in shock if this ever went away for whatever reason. So next slide, please. So, and just before I continue in here, the other one was open source intelligence. That was, this is key. And we used to program this into PREDICT, and we used to have a company that would go out and read, Twitter, Facebook, even local, I forget the big one in China, but they had individuals that worked for them that were bilingual, trilingual, could read and write in multiple languages. So they would go and look up information in the individual country's, newspaper. They would read the newspaper to try to get intelligence out of it. It worked, but we in IT, we just don't target things because we see something bad in the world. We have to work with our operational folks. They're the experts on the admissibility of the product. So with open source, what was happening is we were getting it digitally and sitting on it until operations made a decision. Well, that information is also going to the operational folks. So it was kind of a waste of functionality because everything had to be triaged through our operational team first. So open source kind of changed over the years, and FDA actually opened foreign offices. So we actually have an office in Beijing, China. We have 2 offices, one in Mexico, the other in South America. We have an office in Europe. So a lot of information that really was open source intelligence to us now goes through those offices, and there's procedures for that information getting to our operational folks. So we still utilize open source. It's just changed over the years on how we use it and the type of open source. Next slide, please. So some other factors is, PREDICT looks at every line of data. And, when PREDICT first came out, we had manufacturers asking us, well, what's our risk score? And we're like, well, we don't really do it that way. Or a country, what's our risk score, when there's high level meetings, and it doesn't work that way. The risk is on the whole line of data, and that string of data, has dozens and dozens of fields of data, and we look at each one, and each one is evaluated, and then we gather a score, and that score then is compared to that same commodity over the last 30 days. So it's comparing itself. So if it's apples, it's going to look at Apple imports over the last 30 days, and it comes up with a percentile. So we don't want to try to compare apples to like a microwave or a Apple to a car radio. Interesting enough, we regulate car radios and we regulate microwaves. So we had to change the way PREDICT thinks and how it looks at itself. So apples compared to apples, oranges compared to oranges, which is a saying. So it's interesting. PREDICT wasn't built in a day. PREDICT is about now 10 years old, and it's changed from when it was first thought of and designed to what it is today. And it continues to change, and it has to change because patterns change. Imports change. I tell you, for decades, human foods was the #1 imported product we regulate. This day, it's medical devices. So patterns change. So we have to be able to change, and our applications need to be flexible and to be able to change with the times. And again, I talked about system-made proceeds versus human-made proceeds. We also want to facilitate trade. We also want to speed up trade, and we don't want to hold products at the border for no reason. And I'll give you, because products will go bad if it sits at the dock. And I'll give you an example. We have the Center for Biologics, and they do, human tissue to blood. So say, a sample of human tissue is being brought into the country, and we hold it up for an extra long time, that human tissue dies. And the company, whether they're bringing it in to do research, or, it's a university or a research hospital, they lose out on money. And then they could come after us for that money. So we just need to be very constant and use risk to target the highest risk products, but also allowing, the lower risk products to get into the country quicker, to keep trade flowing. And then for those lines that get held, or a product gets held, and it's a checklist that the operations does have to go through, and PREDICT just provides the information. It's really the human has to validate and then make the final decision. The system doesn't make the decision. The system makes the recommendation, and then the human has the option whether to agree or not agree. And we have built in where if they do not agree with what PREDICT recommends, through the system, they could send us feedback and say, this product should have been held, or this product failed the lookup and I found the information, it should have passed. They could send us that information through the application where, there's a screen that allows them to do it, and it pulls all the information into an email. So they don't have to retype anything. It just pulls all the information. They send it to an inbox that's monitored by part of my team here. My team would evaluate it, reach out to them, and then work with our operational folks if something needs to change. We just don't change it because one user says they don't think it's right. We have to work with our headquarters operational team to see what they feel. If they feel it should be changed, then we change it. If they feel no, it's a one-time thing, it's a 1 in a million type of thing, then we keep things as is. Next line, please. So just some other high-level sources of information we use, field exams and samples. So we have two types of exams. We have a field exam and a label.
I lost
To
you.
list out everything
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. We lost you for a few seconds. Can you start at this slide again, please?
Sure. Yeah, my message, internet is unstable, and I'm in my office, so I purposely came here today.
Well, we'll live with the government internet.
That's right.
Thank you.
Sure. For exams, there's two types of exams: field exams and label exam. Label exam is what it sounds like. It's the label on the product. They verify that all the ingredients are listed. All the allergens are listed, may contain peanuts or tree nuts, or made in the facility of nuts. It has to list out the allergens. So that's eyes on the product. They'll go out, they do a field exam, they look at it, they make a decision. So, sampling is the true science, right? We're taking the product, we're sending it to a laboratory. The laboratory does its thing. I'm not a lab person, so and then they come back with the results. If it's good, the product is allowed to come into the country. If it's, I don't want to say bad, or if it's violative, then the product, there's two things that can happen. They could recondition, which is they could take the product, even though it's violative, there's some type of change to the product to bring it into compliance. So say, hypothetically, it's a container of apples, but the apples are going bad. Well, a human can't eat it. It'll make a human sick. But they could grind up the apples and turn it into fertilizer. So the company still makes some money, and they recondition it for another purpose, and then it's allowed in. Otherwise, it's refused, and then they have to send it away. Another key thing is inspections. Our agency has inspection authority, and we've gone to Georgia and done plenty of inspections in firms in Georgia, not just within the United States, but we actually travel to our partners around the world and do inspections. Those results are fed into PREDICT, and that information is tied to its algorithm for risk. So if it has a good inspection, you'll get, and I'm going to use quotes, good guy points. You have a bad inspection, bad guy points. So that can raise or lower the risk. But if it raises enough that, above that threshold, the product's going to get held. If it's a good guy points, it may drop it below that threshold to allow the product to come in much easier. But next, we also look at the product, the risk of the product. Some products are much more riskier than others. So like a banana, well, you're going to peel the banana. So if there's stuff on the outside of the banana, you peel it, it's protected on the inside. But seafood is considered high risk. Seafood could have antibiotics if it's farmed seafood, decomposition. So certain products need to be looked at a little bit more strictly than others. And each center that we work with gives us a listing of how their products are. Are they high risk, low risk, or medium risk? And we feed that information into PREDICT. So when PREDICT provides that information to our users, that's one of the fields that it's using to calculate risk is the product. And then lastly, and I mentioned this in the beginning, the accuracy is key. the filer or broker that does the data entry, we don't regulate them. Our partners at U.S. Customs regulate them. But we do what's called evaluations. So we will look over their history and see if we had to make corrections. So our users have the ability to correct any piece of data that comes in. And if they correct it, they what we call a rescreen, because any correction changes the source data. They rescreen it so that it goes through PREDICT once again, and then PREDICT could reevaluate, the risk. But the accuracy is so key, because accuracy slows down trade. Inaccuracy slows down trade. Sorry, I apologize. But also inaccuracy, are they doing it on purpose to try to get around, controls that we have and get a bad product into the United States? Or is it, simple mistake, and that's hard to determine, someone being, more malicious versus accidental. But when we do our outreach, even in the early days of PREDICT, accuracy of the data is absolutely key. And we highlight that the more accurate you are, the quicker things are. And that's also a selling to industry. But if they say we get a pattern of a broker / filer giving us bad data, we evaluate them. We see it's bad. Really, the only thing we can do it in the Food and Drug Administration is pull their ability to file electronically, which that means that they have to go through the old paper forms, fill out all the papers, either mail it to an FDA local office or hand deliver it. And then the FDA person goes through the documents instead of a computer. Well, it slows us down too. So it's really punishment for both sides. But if it's obviously it rises to an issue or a level that it's very concerning to whether public health, security, then we'll go to U.S. Customs. They have more authority and they regulate them. We do have MOUs with U.S. Customs for sharing data with each other, and we work hand in hand. So we have a really good relationship. So if there's an issue, it will be raised with U.S. Customs. Next slide. And just if anybody's interested, on FDA.gov, there is a pretty big presence of imports. It does have information about PREDICT and some of our other applications, rules and regulations, bringing stuff in. It's just a wealth of information, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and more information added. It's the best that I've seen it in a long time with the information for the public. So if you're interested, please go ahead. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And I want to close this. And I had popped up, tell me I lost it. Let me just grab your the link that you were sharing. So this is a part of the information that is available for everybody, for the general public, as well as all of our trade partners. It's taking a little while to load because it's live and it's real time, or as real as it can be, information about the product. So let's let it load. I'll stop sharing and I'll come back. So I thank you very, very much for this wonderful seminar. I would like to open the floor for questions. This is a really interesting topic. This is also a topic that is crucial for our partners in the Republic of Georgia, because they are expanding their imports tremendously. They're also a transit point for a lot of other countries. And they have wonderful teams, both at customs and at the food safety, the National Food Agency, who are developing all of these partnerships needed to be able to process these import lines efficiently, catch as many of the violative ones, but let go as fast as possible as many of the non-violative ones as we can. So I'd like to open the floor to questions, and I will give a minute or two. You are welcome to type your questions in the chat, and you can type them in Georgian. We have Mari and Ilya from Rapti who will be translating for us if you type a question. Or you can ask your question with either just the microphone or microphone and camera. And you can ask it in Georgian, and again, we'll have it translated if you do that, or you can ask it in English. So we'll give you a couple of minutes, and you know me, if you don't ask questions, I'm going to take the opportunity. Okay, I'm going to start with my question then. If you give me that chance, I'm not going to pass on it. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's incredibly interesting that you are a true IT person. You started your career in programming for cash machines, ATMs. And so you come at it from a very different point of view from many of our participants today, who are just like me, they're food science and customs and trade type of people, and not programmers, although there might be in our audience, I hope. So for us, it's we think of these things a little bit differently, but it's important to understand. I like the way you presented, because it helped me understand how that data is crucial for you, how you have the input from the users within the FDA that can tell you, well, this product made it, it shouldn't have, this product was blocked by PREDICT, but it should have gone through and all that, so that you can continue to change it and maybe change these sources of information. Add to them. I'm sure you don't lose a lot of, you don't discard a lot of information, you probably add mostly. And my first question is that you mentioned that your sources of information include the centers and the centers' systems. And the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, or as we know it, CIFSAN, and the Center in Veterinary Medicine, the CVM, they're who handle food of all origins, except, of course, meat, although CVM is responsible for the health of the animals before they are slaughtered. But they're both recognized for their research as well as their regulatory functions. Would the results of their research also possibly be incorporated as input in PREDICT if it was relevant?
Yes. In this age of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is a big driver within the Food and Drug Administration, our commissioner, if you didn't know, it's the second time serving as commissioner, but he actually came from Google. So he, even though he's a trained medical doctor, he has a background in IT and saw some of the upcoming technology. So when he came here, he still to this day promotes it. I know our partners at the centers are really diving in how to use this technology for research and evaluation. And their research and evaluation, we use the outcome of their work to program PREDICT, because their outcome will tell us, is this product safe? Is it high risk? Is it sunglasses? We don't really, I don't want to say we regulate them, but it's not a high risk product. So their evaluation of sunglasses lets us know it's not high risk. So maybe not focus on it and focus on something that they said is more high risk. And it's also about the technology. Say we're talking about the Center for Devices. It's also about regulating the technology within the device. There are medical devices that are using AI technology. Well, how do you regulate that? Because you got to regulate the code. How do you know it's accurate? So we are really adjusting as an agency because of technology. And you can't have operations without technology, and you can't have technology without operations. We are married.
For better or worse.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Anyone for another question? Are you still leaving the floor to me? And I have to admit, some of the questions that I have prepared that were actually brought by you. So thank you very much for giving input in advance and providing questions.
Of course.
Okay. So my second question, when this one came from some people in Georgia, in your opinion, how long would it take for a country starting from scratch to establish a rudimentary risk-based tool to help them better target resources for import control? In the same hypothetical scenario, have you seen the private sector step up to the plate and offer IT services that are specialized to develop these kinds of systems?
That's tricky. We can't accept anything from industry. It's, our rules, even if they come up with software and say, this software is a game changer. We actually, within the agency, we have the Office of Information Technology Management, which is different from my group. And they approve what software and technology can and cannot be used within the FDA. And it's a list. It could be anywhere from software to cameras. If it's not on that list, we can't use it. So, but we do rely on third-party vendors to create software. For example, the software used to import products into the United States, whether it's FDA, USDA, APHIS, any of the U.S. agencies that have import authority. We rely on these third-party vendors to create the software that industry uses to get their products in. So, and if we make a change, we do reach out to the companies and say we're making this change, and hopefully they'll update their software. But it is, and I mean, there's dozens of companies out there that make the software, and you get what you pay for. There's basic software, and then there's high-end software. Obviously, big corporations, Walmarts of the world, one of the biggest companies in the United States, they can afford the best, and they will pay for the best because it's all about money. We will work with those IT vendors. If FDA gets a new regulation and we have to make a change, we make sure the vendors know, they update their software, because if they don't, products get held up, and but we can't force them to. But 9 out of 10 times they do listen. They do listen. And then sometimes if we make a major change in our system, we actually ask them to help us test. So we'll go to them and say, can you, a fake entry of data, and then we'll ask one of the companies, there are multiple companies, to do it. And then we work with customs. Are they receiving the data? Is it going through customs properly? And then it comes to us. Is it coming to us properly? Does it meet all of our downstream systems? So it's a symbiotic relationship, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we have to work together.
Of course. Do you think that some of these companies or other companies actually produce software that could be adapted to become at least the basis for like another country's PREDICT?
Yeah, yes, I do. We've actually, and I could publicly say this, we released something called an RFI. It's a request for information, and it's looking at PREDICT, but in the future. and we put this information out and some requirements in it, and we ask companies to respond to it with their ideas and their technology. So some of them actually, bigger IT companies, Leidos, which is one of the largest IT companies in the United States, or Booz Allen, they will have products already, or they've designed something for another agency or company that they think could be used. So they submit that information to us. And then there's smaller companies that don't have that, but have the idea. They put the idea on paper. This is what we think it could do. This is what we think it looks like. And then they, submit it to the agency, and we look at this information, because we always have to look to the future. Whatever we develop, it's going to be obsolete at some time. Technology moves way too quickly. We hear it now, Predict's 10 years old. It's time to change. Well, Predict's been flexible enough that as time goes on, we can actually add, remove, make edits, so to speak, to it. So we've been lucky that way. But, with the introduction of new technology, more common used technology like AI, we want to be able to be flexible enough to introduce that. We've tried. We've done a seafood pilot using AI technology. We actually did 2 rounds of it. One, we integrated AI with Predict. And then the second pilot was just working with our CIFSAN, our partners at CIFSAN. They developed the AI model. They gave us the output of the model, and we programmed Predict with it. So we're also looking, how do we utilize this new technology? Is Predict capable of integrating? If it's not, how? Do we need to start over? Do we need to rebuild something? But I do think there's products out there that definitely could be used right off the bat to support this. And I'm going to tell you, Predict, there's two pieces of Predict. There's the rules engine, which is common technology. You could go out and buy it anywhere. And then the proprietary piece of Predict that sits on top. That's the piece that, we have to keep quiet. So that rules engine allows us for targeting. If we have a firm that was found violative, they get put on what's called an import alert. And it's not proper, but it's the bad guy list, right? So we'll put them on. So if this firm tries to ship that product again, it's automatically held. No matter what Predict says, Predict can say it's the greatest product in the world. If they're on that import alert, it will be stopped and it will not get into US commerce. So for more of the basic functionalities of IT imports, that rules engine is perfect. And that can be bought anywhere. It's, that algorithm that sits on top of it really is, you have the algorithm is the brain, the rules engine's the body, and one can't function without the other, so to speak.
Well, you can buy one.
Yes,
you can buy a body.
Yes. But
Excellent.
within probably like a couple years, you could develop a basic Predict, as long as you have a good set of data, a good set of accurate data, I should say. Accurate data is key. It doesn't have to go back, 20 years, 5 years. Is as long as you have that good source of data, historical data, that's key.
Excellent.
Because historical patterns are the most likely to be violative. And that's this over 10 years, we've seen, if you have a bad history, you're more likely to bring in something bad. If you have a good history, you're more likely to bring something good. So that historical data is key to targeting anything coming in.
Very interesting. One more chance, anyone with a question? Otherwise, I'm going to take that last question slot. Okay, you're too shy. You're too shy. So another question that came from our, please go ahead, Ilya.
Yeah. Gregory, thank you for your presentation and for your explanation. As I understood, in a couple of years, you can develop something like sample system or simple software to use. I know it could be hard, but how much it will cost financially? and how much people we will need to do it, if we really want to do it. So
Yeah, I think it,
how much resources we need, like human, financial, whatever, all that to have better picture what is needed.
I think, obviously more money is always better. to
Sure,
spend.
thank you.
But I think probably if you, within 3 years, couple $1 million, and I'm speaking US dollars, by the way, just to make sure. You could
US
probably,
dollars and US salaries.
yeah. With that money, within 3 years, you would have a working product. And we didn't build Predict and do it live. We actually did a pilot. So, and we piloted it just in one area of the country, one port, and just one product. It was seafood, just to see, all the work in the world doesn't make a great product. So we needed to see it in real life before even taking the next step to expanding it to other products and then spreading it across the country. But I think, a couple million each year, as long as you have great data, that's key to anything is the data. I know a lot of people I've spoken to, still a lot of information's on paper. There is techniques to get the information off paper and put it and digitize it, but that's expensive. So, but I think, a couple million within 3 years, you would have something that could work.
Thank you.
And just
Much
remind
more.
when Predict started, when Predict started, it's not what Predict is today. So, obviously the money we invested to get it online, we kept investing over the years to make changes, enhancements. Every couple of years we have to evaluate Predict. Is it still working as intended? What's not working? Do we need to make changes? So, it's not just a money investment. It's government investment, time and effort, staff, people, being familiar with it, being called in the middle of the night because a product's being held and someone wants to blame Predict for it. Why is Predict doing this? And explainability. I should highlight that. Explainability is absolutely key with any system for imports, because someone's always going to ask, why was it stopped? And if you can't explain why it stopped, then the system could be challenged, whether legally in court, so explainability is absolutely key too. Sorry, I should have highlighted that in the beginning.
Always a good time. Wow. I have to say, I thought it would be more expensive, but I'm happily surprised by the fact that, technology could be assembled with information in about 3 years. It's great news, because it means that you don't need to be delayed for a very long time, and you can be piloting as you go. Start with a little bit of information, pilot, see how it works, and then during that time continue to bring in information from your sources that you have.
Right.
I'll give another minute for a question from our audience. Otherwise, I have another question. Okay. So using the link that you shared at the end of your presentation, I had a look and of course could see that the FDA for human food products, human food only, deals with over 50 million entry lines per year. There's roughly another 500,000 for animal feed. So that's what us people on this webinar deal with. So here we have 50 million lines of entry. Do you have an idea of the impact of your tool in terms of the increased likelihood of it inspecting an entry line that will be rejected compared to before? So catching those bad products.
Yeah, I mean, you could see patterns, whether certain products from certain countries have historically been violative. I'm trying to be politically correct. I apologize, but and then this goes to the beginning when countries would ask, "What's our risk score?" because we do have, I talked about import alerts. Import alerts is one of our major enforcement tools. If we catch you with a volatile product, you go on import alert. And then there's a process to come off. But if we're seeing that product is being an issue across a single country, then we could do a countrywide. And that's when it gets political, right? So apples, I always go back to apples. And I hate to pick on China, but if we're seeing an issue with apples from multiple manufacturers across China, then we could do a countrywide, meaning all apples from this country will automatically get stopped. And it's up to the manufacturers to prove to the US government that the product is safe. And they prove it by hiring an in-country within the United States, a laboratory to test their product. And then the results are sent to us. And then we have our lab people review the results, make sure the technique that the lab follow, its standard techniques, everything checks out. If it checks out, it's kind of like a check, right? So they'll have to do that a couple more times, and then they can petition to come off. Otherwise, if the lab says, we don't agree with this, they have to start over. And it's costly. It's costly to get on import alert because you have to pay that lab to get off. So, I think that's incentives for companies to maybe their products may be volatile, but in good faith. We do time to time get I don't want to say a warning, but alerted ahead of time that a product's coming in by the company that says, we already know it's bad. We just want to let you know. Can you look at it real quick, reject it so we can get it out? That's a good relationship. But again, those are commercial ports, whether it's by cargo ship, train coming from Mexico, trains coming from Canada, plane cargo. But we also have international mail facilities, which is a kind of like an island in the import world, because those are not commercial. That would be you have a relative within the United States. And we always joke about Christmas cakes, the fruit cakes for Christmas time, that grandma sends it to, the grandchild in the United States. Well, technically we regulate that food, but it will come through the international mail facility, which is not a traditional commercial shipment. So they don't have all that digital data ahead of time. And at the international mail facility, we have to work with our partners, whether that's US Customs or the United States Mail Service, because the US Mail Service actually gets the data first. Customs then looks at it, and then the Customs thinks it's an FDA regular product. And then they'll bring the product to us, and then we look at it. And if it's volatile, we alert the receiving end of it. We have this product in international mail facilities, but volatile. Do you want it? Depending on the product. Or if we send them information and we don't hear from them, we destroy it or refuse it. But the international mail facility is a very hot topic because we don't get that data ahead of time. It creates a loophole.
Yeah.
A lot of legal stuff comes in that way. How do we better work with our partners? Because we don't regulate certain things, but if we find something, say, illegal drugs, obviously we report that to the Drug Enforcement Agency, our partners. We will actually put that data in our system, and we have a status called referred to another government agency. So we still record it and have the history of it and what we did with it. Not that it's, we took a final action, but it shows that we had this product and we gave it to this agency and then we closed it out. But the international mail facility it's been a hot topic. We actually created new functionality that just went live this weekend that we're really happy about, which helps us integrate digitally with US Postal. Because we don't have that digital data, now we have the capability of our users at the IMF. They use iPads with our application on it. They can actually use the iPad to scan the mail tracking number. And that information sends a signal to US Postal. And then under agreement, US Postal sends us data back and it populates our screen. And then it goes through PREDICT. So it's trying to digitize a loophole of information. It's not 100%. It's our first phase, but it's a major change to our operations. Because it is. I don't want to say it's the the term we use, the Wild West, right? In the United States, the old West Cowboys, the Wild West. But it does go through multiple agencies. We have to work with each other, because if we get the package and it's an FDA product and we destroy it, we also have to let US Postal know, so their records are kept up to date. So it actually makes it a little bit better, because in time we'll digitally send them a message of what we did with the package. We destroyed it, we released it, we refused it. So US Postal records are always maintained and up to date too. So it's a marriage between two agencies that, boots on the ground work together, but that was it. And now over the last couple of years, build up that relationship with the agency, which is, it's hard because, they have to fund their side. We have to fund our side. We could develop, we're quicker than they can, or they could develop quicker than we can. Trying to line up and work two agencies it's challenging, but in the end, it's definitely rewarding, and public health benefits, the most.
Very interesting. Very interesting. As you say, people, boots on the ground, people working physically closely together, have always worked together, but now you can be at either end of the country and you're still working together.
Yep. Or around the world.
Or around the world, exactly. Okay, one last chance for a final question. I'm thinking of you, Shalva, my solid question asker. Okay, I'm going to let everybody go. Thank you very much. I know we always end up being a little late in Georgia because of the time difference, early for us, late for you guys. So thank you very much for joining. We had huge participation again. As always, this webinar was recorded and will be made available to you with Georgian subtitles. Takes us a little while, but we get it done. And it will be available in your Google Classroom, the experience sharing class. And we will inform you as soon as it's available. I want to thank our speaker, Mr. Gregory Parkover, who is an amazing speaker about a topic that is so complicated. IT is always like, what are we talking about? And yet now I feel I understand how it works and where all that data comes from. So thank you very much. And we will stay in touch. If we have some questions, we might ask you for a little bit more time to provide some answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, RACD and the USDA. Have a good day, everybody. Or good evening.
Hello, اسمت چه میخواه؟
Goodbye.
Bye, Rob. Hi, Nino. How are you? Oh, you're on mute.
მადლობა მინდა მოგახსენოთ აღნიშნული სემინარისთვის თუ ინფორმაციისთვის ძალიან ინფორმატიული იყო ჩვენთვის. იმედია მოგვეცემა შესაძლებლობა ახლოდან გავიცნოთ.
Ilya, I need help here.
She is extremely happy to see us and very interested, and she hopes she will be able to see in real life how system works.
It's pretty secretive, as you can imagine. But we have another, I should have mentioned it. We have another webinar next week where the speaker is someone who actually developed the brain. So that machine learning and everything.
საინტერესოა, უკვე საინტერესოა. სასიამოვნო იყო თქვენი ნახვა ყველასი.
ყოველთვის რა. მართალია ვიღაცას სხვა სახელით ხარ, მაგრამ მაინც შენ გაიხარ.
ჩემი სახელით ვიყავი, მაგრამ ცოტა გამიჭირდა. ხმა ვერ
აჰა.
ჩავრთე და ასე შემდეგ ცოტა
აა.
პრობლემები მქონდა და
აი ბატონო. აიო, მომინაწვე, დიდი ხანი არ ვინახე ხარ და ბატონი
გამიხარდა
მისტერ
თქვენი ყველასი
სურატიკალიაც
დანახვა.
გამოჩნდა ეხლა ისეთი.
ეს ასევე დიდი მადლობა მინდა გადაუხადო, ინფორმატიული იყო. და ჩვენ ახლა საქართველოს იმ ეტაპზე ვართ, რომ ჩვენ ვქნით კანონმდებლობას, მუშაობთ რეგულაციებზე და ჩვენთვის ძალიან საინტერესოა ასეთი თემების მოსმენა. და დიდი მადლობა მინდა გადაუხადო ქალბატონ ჯენის მოხსენებელს და ყველას, ვინც ორგანიზაცია გაუწია ამ შეხვედრას.
შენ გაიხარე. So he is very thankful, wants to say thank you because they are working now on this risk-based checking methodology and it's very useful for them to give additional information.
Excellent. And
Ma'am,
again, come next
And-
week because our seminar from Canada, from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they developed their tool much more publicly. In the United States, it's very secretive, but in Canada, the engine itself has been presented in conferences. So she'll be talking to us about how they brought in, how they decided which information to bring in, and what kinds of mathematics, magic.
ამერიკაში ეს ცოტა ისეთიაო რა, ჩემის ფონდური გასაიდუმლოებულიაო, მაგრამ რას იყენებენ და წყაროები და რაღაცეები, მაგრამ კანადა ბევრად უფრო გახსნილია და უფრო ისეთია და პრეზენტაციებზე აჩვენებენ რა ლოგარითმებით და როგორ აკეთებენ, ამიტომ იმ ფაქტს საუბარი ცოტა ისეთი იქნებაო, მაგრამ სიმართლე რო ვთქვა, რეალში თარგმნა ბევრად უფრო მიადვილდება თქვენ როცა გვერდზე მყავხართ, ვიდრე ესე რა და ამიტომ უნდა გამოვასწოროთ ჩვენი კამპანია. I prefer to translate in real life than sitting at the screen, you know, so.
I'm sure. Well, we all prefer to be with each other in real life.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your
ხო,
participation.
დიდი მადლობა დროისთვის და რომ შემოგვიერთით და გაიხარეთ რა და როგორ განვითარდება ეს ყველაფერი ცოტა ხანში ვნახავთ და გეტყვით ყველაფერს რა.
მადლობა თქვენ ყველას.
გაიხარეთ,
მადლობა.
მაგრამ
Hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye bye.